We go to Ottawa now, where the heat remains on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as calls for him to step aside continue.
Our Parliament Hill correspondent Glen McGregor joining us now from the nation's capital. And Glen, I know that as Liberal caucus members making their way into work today, a couple of targeted questions were asked.
Yeah, that's right. Liberal MPs who come out to Parliament Hill this week getting questions about whether they continue to support the Prime Minister and his continued leadership. This morning, the Prime Minister playing to a friendly room. He has a meeting on with his cabinet ministers. And of course, all those ministers were asked questions as they came in. This is, of course, supportive crowd. Cabinet ministers owe their jobs to the decision by Justin Trudeau to name them to cabinet, and they get a big raise for doing that. They also get a car, driver. These are good jobs, coveted jobs for any backbench MP. So it would have been surprising if any ministers, current ministers in his cabinet, spoke out against his leadership. But some of them did comment on this report that there is essentially a mutiny within the caucus of MPs, amongst backbench MPs, who are unhappy with his continuing to stay on as leader. They've said that they've heard from constituents that they're tired of him and they want someone else to come and take over to fight Pierre Poilievre in the next election campaign. But let's listen to a couple of comments from cabinet ministers. First up is Pascal Saint-Onge, the Heritage Minister, followed by Sean Fraser, the Housing Minister. Here's what they had to say.
First of all, the entire cabinet and myself for sure are 100% behind the Prime Minister, who's led this country through difficult times in the past few years, and I know he's still the leader for the Liberal Party. I think it's time for the caucus and for us all to really think about Canadians and use our efforts to make sure that we address the affordability crisis and the preoccupations of Canadians during this time. It's also a good time for us to get ready for next election.
Look, I'll speak for myself. I'm a member of his cabinet. Obviously, we support him. I think the work that we're trying to do to help Canadians is really the main focus right now. We're up against somebody who's campaigning on promises to deny access to free birth control for women, who won't even get a security clearance to look into allegations about his own caucus members being engaged in foreign interference, who's opposing policies that are going to help build more homes. I know which side I'm on.
How can you do that work would have to be?
So as I say, these are the people who are going to be most supportive of Justin Trudeau just by the nature of their jobs. But tomorrow, Trudeau will be facing a different crowd. That is the entire Liberal caucus, including this rump group of, we think, somewhere between 30 and 35 MPs who have signed on to this letter calling for him to step down. They, according to media reports, plan to confront the Prime Minister verbally in that caucus meeting tomorrow and ask him to consider their offer that he step aside. The Prime Minister, we don't think, is going to go for that. He was asked, just as he was coming into the cabinet meeting this morning, whether he thought his leadership was at risk. He had a one-word response in French: no. And it's clear he is intending to stay on. He's going to dig in his heels and fight through this. There's no mechanism in the Liberal Party constitution that will allow MPs to force out a sitting party leader and prime minister. The Liberals did not adopt something called the Reform Act that the Conservatives have adopted, and they use that to get rid of Aaron O'Toole back in 2022. A lot of dissatisfaction with the election campaign he'd run a couple of months earlier. But with the Liberals, it's going to have to be pressure, and it's going to have to be public pressure. Some of those cabinet ministers saying, if you're unhappy with him, come out and put your name to it. You know, go public and say that you identify yourself, rather than sort of doing this anonymously on the back channel, off the record, leaking things to journalists and not actually saying that you actually want the Prime Minister to leave. So this meeting tomorrow, Mel finds that this is going to be crucial. We'll see. It's a closed-door meeting. Media won't be in there, but we'll hear right after that meeting. We'll hear from MPs about what happened and what Justin Trudeau's response was to those MPs who want him out of the job.
Okay, we will definitely be watching that, Glenn. Meantime, switching gears today, marking a somber anniversary, something that happened in Ottawa, but of course something that all Canadians are marking.
That's right. 10 years ago today, a lone gunman staged a violent attack on Parliament Hill. He drove up in a car that he just bought a couple of days earlier and parked it right next to the War Memorial, the Cenotaph, and used a hunting rifle to shoot a Canadian Forces member who was standing sentry at the Cenotaph. And then he ran up onto Parliament Hill. He was confronted by a House of Commons security guard at the door. He shot that guard in the foot, ran inside, and he was eventually shot by other security there and killed just outside the Library of Parliament. It was a shocking day for anybody who works on Parliament Hill. really rattled a lot of folks, and it's something that people here in Ottawa, in this fairly small community of people who work in federal politics in Ottawa, remember vividly, including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who was an MP at that time and had just not that far earlier had won leadership of his party. He issued a statement today. I'm going to read for you. There is one image from that day I remember clearly, people protecting one another as we took shelter wherever we were. I remember that in the days that followed, political debate was subsumed by collegial support. And above all, we all remember the service and sacrifice of those who stood guard and those who rushed towards danger to save lives. So Trudeau trying to make kind of a non-partisan message there, referring to sort of kinder times 10 years ago when there was maybe a less of a partisan divide in the House of Commons. But it was obviously an awful day. One young man losing his life in that, Nathan Cirillo, and then of course the gunman himself being killed in something called the Hall of Honor, which is like the main corridor in Centre Block in the House of Commons. Lots of memories, I think, coming up today. Lots of people thinking about that day, where they were when it happened, and a lot of gratitude to the public, the security in the House of Commons that stopped the attack.
Yeah, you can never forget a tragedy like that one that unfolded back in 2014. Glen McGregor in Ottawa, we thank you so much.
Thanks.